All right, welcome to The Explainer. We're jumping right into a really big story today. For 28 long months, the Indian state of Manipur has been absolutely torn apart by a devastating conflict. And now, finally, the Prime Minister has visited. So the big question on everyone's mind is this. Is this the turning point everyone's been hoping for, or is it just too little too late? Yeah, that's really the question at the heart of it all, isn't it? It's been all over the headlines for months. Why now? After 28 months of violence, why this moment? The timing of this visit is just as important as the visit itself. So today, let's break down exactly why it's happening now.
But before we get into all the politics and the strategy, we have to talk about the human cost here. Just look at this number. Over 60,000 people. That's how many have been displaced, forced from their homes since this all started. It's a staggering humanitarian crisis, and we can't lose sight of that.
So how on earth did it get this bad? To really grasp why this visit is such a big deal, we've got to go back a bit. We need to look at the really deep historical roots of this conflict. Okay, so at its very core, what we're looking at is an ethnic conflict. It's primarily between two groups. The Meitei community, who are the majority in the central Imphal Valley, they're about 53% of the population. And then you have the various Kuki-Zo tribes who live in the hills all around that valley. And the whole thing just exploded over one key issue. It was a demand from the Métis community to be given scheduled tribe status. Now, for the Kuki-Zo and the other tribes, this wasn't some abstract political debate. No way. They saw it as a direct threat to their land, to their job quotas, basically to their entire way of life. And that fear, well, that's what lit the fuse. And once that fuse was lit, the escalation was just shockingly fast. It all kicked off in May 2023 with something called a Tribal Solidarity March. From there, it just spiraled completely out of control. We're talking widespread violence, internet blackouts. It got so bad that by early 2025, the state government had pretty much collapsed. That's when the central government had to step in and impose what's known as President's Rule, which basically means they took direct control.
Which brings us right back to that huge question. Why wait 28 months? I mean, really, why? Well, the answer really depends on who you ask. You've got two completely different stories, two competing narratives, trying to explain the government's thinking here.
So on one side, you've got the critics. They're calling this delay a form of abandonment, just leaving the state to fend for itself. But on the other side, you've got the defenders of the government's approach. They're framing it as strategic caution. They argue that if the Prime Minister had visited too soon, it could have just poured fuel on the fire and made a terrible situation even worse.
And that phrase, too little too late, you hear it over and over. It perfectly captures the frustration and anger from people who feel the central government just neglected Manipur. From their point of view, this visit is happening long after the real window for meaningful intervention slammed shut.
Now, if you look at the official reasoning for waiting, they point to a few key things. First, the situation on the ground was just incredibly volatile, politically speaking. Second, there were very real security risks from armed militias. And third, they say it was a strategic choice. They wanted to let some initial peace talks get started before making such a high-profile visit.
So, okay, the visit is finally happening. What is the Prime Minister actually bringing to the table? Well, this whole trip is being framed as a major effort to finally turn the page. And it seems to be built on two main pillars, a message of reconciliation and, well, a massive amount of money. And where he started his trip? That was no accident at all. The very first stop was Churachandpur. Now, this is a major center for the Kuki-Zo community, an area that was hit incredibly hard by the violence. Starting there was a huge symbolic gesture aimed squarely at trying to rebuild trust with the hill tribes.
And he definitely didn't come empty-handed. The centerpiece of this whole plan is this number, 8,500 crore rupees. To put that in perspective for you, that's a development package worth over $1 billion. And the goal here isn't just to rebuild what was lost, it's to completely reshape the state's economy.
And you can really see the strategy when you look at where that money is going. The vast majority of it, we're talking over 85% of the funds, is specifically earmarked for the Kuki-dominated hill areas. This is a very direct attempt to address these long-standing complaints about economic neglect.
Because at the root of all this has always been a conflict fueled by inequality. The economic gap is just stark. You can see the GDP in the hill areas lags a full 30% behind the valley. So the government's core strategy here, their big bet, is that if they can close this economic gap, maybe, just maybe, they can also start to close that ethnic divide.
Which of course brings us to the biggest and most difficult question of all. After so much violence, so much bloodshed, and division, can money and a high-profile visit really be enough to heal a state that's been so deeply fractured along ethnic lines?
So what would a real path to peace even look like? Well, a kind of three-step roadmap seems to be emerging. Step 1, fast-track those peace talks. Step 2, ensure justice. That means actually investigating the atrocities that have happened. And Step 3, use all these new economic projects to try and build a bridge, literally and figuratively, between the communities.
But let's be realistic, the hurdles are huge. You still got armed groups on both sides who are active. You've got that porous border with Myanmar, which creates constant instability. And maybe the toughest challenge of all, the deep, deep psychological scars that this violence has left behind.
And just look at this statistic, it's absolutely staggering. We can talk about the burned villages and the destroyed buildings, but the invisible wounds run so deep. Studies are showing that 40% of the people who've been displaced are suffering from PTSD. You know, healing that kind of collective trauma, that's going to take a whole lot more than new roads and new buildings.
So at the end of the day, we're left right back where we started, with that one big question. Is this visit, with all its massive financial promises, the genuine turning point that Manipur has been so desperate for, or is it a really well-timed political move? The investment is definitely real, but so is the pain. And I guess only time will tell if this is truly the beginning of a lasting peace.